This is Orange Nation Overtime with Stephen Fonte and Paulie Sibilia.
Welcome into Orange Nation Overtime, everyone. Alongside Paulie Sibilia, I'm Stephen Fonte. It's Tuesday. It's a game day for the Orange. Another late night inside the Dome. 9 o'clock tip between Syracuse and Florida State. 9 o'clock tips have not been kind to the Orange. A couple of really close games. Monmouth and St. Joe's were both 9 o'clock tips. They've got Florida State tonight. Another one of these games, Paulie, that it's not necessarily a must-win. It's not really going to help your resume all that much, but you better not lose it. Yeah,
it's been like every game they've played in the ACC so far. It's going to be rinse and repeat for the next two games. Then you move up a tier, and you find out if you're the best of the low tier amongst the middle tier or the top tier teams. And Syracuse's schedule breaks out in the way you find out like a ladder.
If you haven't had a chance to see Florida State play yet this year, they play fast. Their average possession time is 14.6 seconds, which is sixth quickest in the country. They shoot a lot of threes. They take, on average, 35 threes per game. That's second most in the country. Now, they're only making 11 threes per game, so their three-point shooting percentage is just a shade under 32%. That's not great. That's 277th in the country. But they play fast. They shoot a lot of threes, and I think, two things are going to be really important tonight for Syracuse in particular. I think rebounding is going to be important. If you're missing a lot of threes, you can't give them second-chance opportunities. And I think that with a faster-paced game, generally speaking, it creates more unsettled situations and it creates more turnovers, right? Florida State forces a lot of turnovers. They give up a lot of points, but they also force a lot of turnovers. Syracuse has to take care of the basketball tonight, Paulie.
Yes. They've kind of struggled with offensive rebounds, Steve. They were giving up too many second chance points. That's what got Pitt back in the game. Along with the turnovers, you need to rebound the ball. 1 and out for Florida State.
We did have Jeff Culhane on our Orange Nation radio show this afternoon. He is the voice of the Florida State Seminoles, and he filled us in on the opponent. We opened him up by asking about their new head coach, Luke Laux, in his first year as head coach of the Noles.
Well, I think he's been absolutely fantastic in connecting with our fan base since he was hired back in March of last year. And he's done a fantastic job of, bringing our fans and donors and alums and boosters kind of behind the scenes, if you will, of Florida State basketball and of our program. And, in this era, obviously, this is kind of what we say, right, guys, when we're talking about building a team and trying to win as much as possible, you got to have support. And, that's been a big item of focus for he and his staff, and our administration is continuing to build that financial support with NIL and all the other items, and so that's been key. That's been huge, and he's trying to grow that as much as he possibly can while building a roster in his first year and moving forward that can compete in this league. And he's a competitive guy, doesn't shy away from playing the best teams he possibly can. We played a really tough schedule of non-conference play. We've had some bumps and bruises, but it has been definitely a welcome addition following a legendary Hall of Fame career from Leonard Hamilton. I think he's the perfect coach for this time frame and era right now for college athletics and college basketball at Florida State, fellas.
You mentioned that tough schedule. Gave Florida all they could handle, lost by 2 to the Gators, gave Duke all they could handle. That was a one-possession game, but also got blown out against NC State the last time out, lost by double figures to North Carolina. What is a more true representation of this team? The one that's been able to take Duke and Florida down to the wire, or the one you saw last time out?
Guys, your guess is as good as mine, boys. I'll tell you that. It has been head-scratching for everybody involved. You laid it out. We've seen fight. We've also seen this team struggle at times, and it's it's hard to understand. It's in there. And also in an exhibition game, and I realize it's exhibition, but, we played Alabama in Birmingham back in October, and that was a 109-105 game, and it was a lot of fun to watch. You felt like it was a conference tournament, NCAA tournament type of game in exhibition. And so we've seen it. And I think that's what's been the most frustrating part of how this team has lost games, at Dayton to Texas A&M. We got blown out at home by Georgia in the challenge, and then Saturday was just, there's no other way to put it. It was bad. I mean, it was a bad day from the start. And I think there's a lot of attention to the early portion of this game tonight, guys. Florida State against the Syracuse team that is playing probably their best basketball of the season, winning 5 of their last 6 with Donnie Freeman back. I think we'll know a lot, quite honestly, by the under 12 timeout in the first half. And quite honestly, FSU's got to make threes. They've got to make shots. That's been a key area of how Luke Laux' teams have had success, especially this one, obviously. And it needs to happen again. And it's going to be a huge part of it early because Syracuse has defended the 3 very well in 3 ACC games, only allowing 13 total made threes. So I think we'll know a lot, quite honestly, in the first 10 minutes of this game tonight about how it's going to go.
I think we know what to expect offensively, from what Florida State's going to try to do. They're going to try to shoot a lot of threes. They're going to get up and down. They're going to play fast. What about on the other end of the court? From a defensive perspective, they've been giving up a lot of points. I would imagine some of that is the pace of play. They've been forcing a lot of turnovers. What can Cuse fans expect from a Florida State defensive perspective tonight when Syracuse has the ball?
Yeah, guys, that's an area that has to tighten up. I mean, it really does. You look at the numbers, and the turnovers forced have been good. The steals have been good, but we're allowing a lot of opportunities to score the basketball. And I think you're right. I think some of that's with the pace that has been laid out offensively. You give up some things on the defensive end, but if that's going to happen, you got to shoot the 3 better. And we've seen this team when we've had losses like Saturday. This team only made 5 threes. That can't happen. This is a team that has to make double-digit threes to have a chance to win, especially on the road in the league. And the other part of it is rebounding. We're not the Leonard Hamilton, Stan Jones type of teams with just long, athletic bodies. We have a couple of those, but we're not overwhelming like Florida State has been during their heyday when they made runs to the Sweet 16 and the Elite 8. And so they really have to fight on the glass and, trying to battle with William Kyle III and Donnie Freeman and all the length of Syracuse is a key area of importance for this staff as they get this team ready to go tonight.
In terms of, you mentioned Donnie Freeman, William Kyle, and some of the key players for Syracuse. How about key players for Florida State? Who should Cuse fans keep their eyes on?
Well, Robert McRae V has to be aggressive early. He is a guy that's played in the league. He started his career at Wake Forest, then transferred to Jacksonville University in the A-Sun, and he's been a great scorer. Luke Laux challenged Robert to be a better distributor. He's been unbelievable. He's one of the best in the country at 106 assists total and 6.6 assists per game. And he came in and set the single-game assist record in his first game at Florida State. And he's the second fastest to 100 assists in a season all-time in FSU history. So he's been when he's good, we're good. But he's got to be aggressive when he has the ball in his hands and cannot be passive and shy away from contact. He's got to get to the bucket, and he's got to get into the paint and touch the painted area to open up some of those three-point shooting attempts for guys like Chauncey Wiggins, who Cuse fans know. He played at Clemson for 4 seasons. Kobe McGee is a Drexel transfer who shoots the three pretty well. Martin Somerville has done some nice things. He was the America East Rookie of the Year last season at UMass Lowell. And then a young guy, a true freshman, Thomas Bassong out of Paris, France, has really emerged here over the last 5 games or so as a talented guy scoring in double figures. So those are some of the names that have to rise up and have to emerge for this FSU team tonight against Syracuse, and what's going to be a great atmosphere all the time, obviously, here at the JMA Dome.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I was going next. Is I was going to ask you for a formula for success tonight for Florida State. What needs to happen for this to be a one possession game in the final 5 minutes and could go either way down the stretch?
Yeah, have to hit shots early. Against Duke and Carolina, Florida State made threes. Against Carolina, made 7 threes in the first half and were trending well, but then went ice cold in the final 20 minutes. Against Duke, made 14 threes. And we're in the game the entire way at home against the Blue Devils. And so those have to go down. And you have to make them early and not allow the crowd to get into it. You have to sustain an early punch from Syracuse, because I have a feeling, I've heard Red Autry say, I want to see this team start blowing people out. Well, you look at what happened Saturday to FSU, and I'm sure, Red is seeing blood right now for the Orange, and wants his guys to come out and make a statement at home with some momentum that they have. So I think early in this game, you have to be able to limit second chance opportunities. You have to knock down some shots from the outside, and you have to keep everybody off the glass. And you have to, and the other item too, J.J. Starling diced this up last year pretty good in the ACC tournament with 27 points. You have to sit down, guard, defend without fouling, and not allow JJ to get going off the bounce, because when he gets cooking and confident, that makes this Syracuse team really tough to beat.
That's Jeff Culhane, voice of the Florida State Seminoles. Again, 9 o'clock tip inside the dome between Syracuse and FSU. We've seen this team, Paulie, look a lot better since Donnie Freeman returned from injury. J.J. Starling is coming off a really good performance. It would be nice to see him kind of, start to stack good performances and kind of turn the corner. The backcourt has been up and down this year, but this team has looked better with Donnie on the floor. And I know people will say, well, it's just because it's Georgia Tech, just because it's Pittsburgh. You start stacking 3-4 games like that, though, and now it becomes a trend. That's what I'm looking forward to seeing tonight. Can they continue to look better on offense and as good as they've been with Donnie back?
Yeah, if you get JJ and Donnie playing well together, they're going to be tough to beat for anybody.
Yeah.
And that's it. Am I worried about tonight? Not really, but I don't think you can. Syracuse is a roll out the basketballs and beat anybody team. So, yes, I'm worried about every game with Syracuse, because they have very little room for error.
Yeah, you can't look past anybody. I mean, even Boston College, we just saw BC jump out on Louisville and lead Louisville at the half last weekend. And, but you give a team like that confidence, and now you start playing tight, knowing our NCAA tournament hopes are on the line. We better win this game.
That's the difference between Syracuse and Louisville, though. Like, if that happens with Syracuse, they could easily lose that game, whereas Louisville can play their B or C game and still beat a BC, where Syracuse has to be playing an A.
That's a good point. That's a good point. You said you're not worried about tonight. You think the spread's 8.5?
I don't think they'll cover. That's too much.
It's a lot of spread, but you think they win the game?
Yes.
Yeah, I think they win the game as well. And on the show today, I predicted a 7-point win. It's tough to win games in conference by double figures. Syracuse has done it back-to-back games on the road. Can they make it 3 in a row, 3 wins of double figures? I don't know. I think the law of averages say this is going to be a close game. Let's switch gears. Let's talk some football. The college football championship game is set between Indiana and Miami, and we had Ty Hildebrandt from the Solid Verbal College Football Podcast on to talk about it. And we opened him up by talking about Indiana and Curt Cignetti. I asked him if what Curt Cignetti has done at Indiana, does it remind him of any other coaching job, how he's taken a team that was, really nowhere on the college football national landscape and turned them into a national title contender and the favorite to win the national title come Monday night?
The only means of comparison that I have is in the old days of playing the old NCAA video game where you would pick one of the worst franchises and then try to build it up. That's sort of what this is. The difference is that when we played that in college, it would take you a good 4 or 5 seasons to get to this point that they're at now. And Cignetti has done it in 2 years. So beyond that, no, I don't think so. I mean, we talk often about what it's going to take, specifically in the case of Miami, to restore a fallen empire. And I feel like that's a conversation we're much more used to having around college football, but certainly no. The question that we typically would get on our show is, hey, who's the next Boise State? Or, hey, who's the next Oregon, or schools that have established themselves as something of a winner in modern day college football. But to take a program like he has that has over 700 career losses in the history of the program and turn them into this now, I think consensus #1 team in the country, I don't know. There's a lot of pixie dust there for sure.
Is Indiana enough to hold him? Do you see him like having bigger goals at NFL, maybe at SEC school, anything like that?
Honestly, I think if he were going to bolt, this would have been the year to do it because there were so many big jobs that were available. And obviously, he's kind of at like the top of whatever his stock value is, whether it be at Florida or Penn State, where he's a Western PA guy. There were plenty of opportunities to jump around and everybody was interested. The fact that he didn't go now, I think, is a pretty good tell that he's there to stay. And honestly, if he would leave to go anywhere at this point, it would probably be for the NFL. So my hunch is that he's going to be there for a while, and this is going to be a story that we see repeat itself over and over.
And along those lines, Ty, I mean, do you think he's just getting started? You know, they talked on the telecast last week about, that Indiana only has 8 4- and 5-star recruits, on their roster. And you look at the other teams in the Final Four, and, they're all 40 plus with 4- and 5-star, former 4- and 5-star recruits. Given that he's been able to do it with lesser talent, quote unquote, and it seems like there's a lot of money now being pumped into that program, and Mark Cuban, is around the program and around the school again, and so on and so forth. Do you think he's just getting started? Is Indiana here to stay, I guess, is my question.
Yeah, it's a good question. So they're definitely here to stay in terms of the transfer portal, because what we have seen now in, I guess this is the third portal cycle for Cignetti at Indiana. The first one was a bunch of JMU guys, 13 James Madison players that came over with him. We obviously saw a bit of an uptick this last portal cycle with bringing in the likes of Fernando Mendoza and some guys that could help him out. What they are doing so far now in this latest iteration of the portal is like a top 10 portal class. So it seems like that is gradually ramping up as more and more is said and more people get the word about what Cignetti is building at Indiana. We haven't seen the high school recruiting tick up yet. My hunch is that is going to be next, but he is using this as sort of a fake it until you make it type of thing. By the way, they'll probably make it just fine on Monday night when they play Miami, and we've already seen them do a pretty good job throughout the course of this season in the playoffs. So I do not mean that as a pejorative towards Indiana, but clearly they are coming at this from a different perspective than, say, Alabama or Florida or Tennessee or any of the known brands in college football. Indiana is very much trying to rip this down and build it from the studs on up. So I think he's doing a really good job in the portal. Clearly the guy's proven that he can coach and he can do the little things, execution, discipline, culture, et cetera, et cetera. He can do all of that stuff really, really well. But I think the missing piece, before I'm going to go out on a limb and say, yes, they're absolutely positively here to stay, let's see where the high school recruiting goes over the next couple of years, and then maybe we could make a judgment call at that point.
I can't believe I'm about to ask this question, but if they beat Miami in the title game, do we have to talk about this particular team as one of the, I'm not saying the best, but one of the best in the last, I don't know, put a number on it, 30, 40 years in college football?
It certainly is one of the best, if not the best, stories of the last 30 or 40 years. In terms of their level of dominance, especially down the stretch. Most recently, we saw this from Ohio State a year ago. It did require them to lose to Michigan for that switch to flip, and then for them to go, and turn into like a modified version of their former self and rip through everyone in the playoff. But I think the closest means of comparison here would probably be 2019 LSU and their run of dominance that we saw with Joe Burrow through the playoff, winning their way, in dominant fashion. The difference here, though, is that Indiana's defense is demonstrably better than that LSU squad. I think where LSU had more top flight, first round caliber talent, Indiana's got a better defense and they play better as a team. So it's really hard to kind of find the appropriate comparison for what is going on, because I think on some level, at least for me personally, I'm distracted by the improbability of it all. Once you get past that to actually start comparing them to some teams in recent memory, it's hard because they are constructed a little bit differently. But the LSU one, I think, is probably as good as any.
No SEC team in the championship again. Are people overblowing the fact that the SEC has struggled the past couple of years? I know bowl games are tough to judge because of the opt-outs and whatnot, but is the SEC in trouble?
define trouble, because the SEC is still a very, very deep conference with a bunch of good teams. But in terms of dominance, I think the era of SEC dominance is probably over. We saw, I think, a pretty dramatic shift with the combination of the transfer portal and NIL. And that seemingly robbed the SEC of some of its dominance right away. And we have seen that manifest now over the last 3 college football seasons. Clearly, there are plenty of teams in the SEC that can contend. But for sure, you look at what's gone on most recently in the postseason, how they've come up short relative to some of their Big Ten, in this case, ACC counterparts. I definitely think the playing field has leveled to some extent. So to say they're in trouble is probably a stretch, but to say that there's a little bit more parity across the sport, I think that's 1,000% accurate.
What about the advantage this has for Miami and the ACC with the way that the ACC is now divvying out money? This is a huge windfall for them.
It is. It is. And this is exactly what they were after, right? This is exactly what some of the bigger schools in the ACC were going for when they kind of modified their agreement. And, you know, you got to get the job done. Ideally, you get the job done at home on Monday night against Indiana, who we've just been talking about here. That would be an added boon to that Miami program and the ACC as a whole. The ACC has taken on a lot of water over these last couple of years. And I think it would be a really cool story for an ACC team to, again, win the game at home, get a national championship for Mario Cristobal, certainly for the U getting back its old swagger. All of that stuff, I can't see a world in which that wouldn't be an awesome story and a great building block for the ACC moving forward.
So along those lines, Ty, I wanted to ask you that because, you know, to Paulie's point, this would be great for Miami individually, right? If they win it and they get all this money that comes with it. For the ACC in general, though, does this make a difference for them moving forward? Do you think that, you know, with Miami winning it, does it make it a more viable conference, you know, in 10 years when the grant of rights runs out, that kind of thing? Do you think that this helps with the future stability of the ACC if Miami's able to get it done, or even just this run in general by Miami?
Future stability, no, because I do think that we're going to be at a spot in, 5-6 years where everything gets thrown in a blender again and everyone is chasing the bag, and we might see more conference realignment, and some of the squeakiest wheels in the ACC will be the ones that maybe are kicking the tires elsewhere. So I don't know if anything that happens on Monday changes that trajectory, but what I will say is think of where the conversation has been now these last couple of years, and it has very much been around not the viability of the ACC as like a long-term thing, but just the viability of the ACC as a conference that should be included and can contend with bigger brothers, right? The Big Ten and the SEC notably. If Miami were to go out there and win this thing, I think it absolutely is a proof of concept that, yes, there are good teams here too. It may not be as deep a conference as the Big Ten, as the SEC, maybe even as the Big 12, but certainly the highest of the high in this conference is good enough to compete with anybody. And I think that has a downstream effect on recruiting. It probably has a downstream effect on coaches, coaching talent, not just head coaches, but assistants that want to come and coach for ACC teams because these guys are trying to build their own profile. Right on through it. We see this with, as I'm sure you guys know well, in college basketball, right? A team goes to the Final Four, wins the national championships. It's not any great secret that enrollments, or at least applications to that school, tend to spike. So these types of things tend to have a real impact, maybe not so much in terms of what happens in the year of our Lord 2035, but in the short term, it can absolutely have a really positive effect, both for the school and I think for the conference.
You brought up the squeaky wheels. The two squeaky wheels are now watching Miami profit off of their what they wanted. What are those two teams in trouble with the ACC?
I think you're talking about Florida State and Clemson. Yeah, I have no idea what Florida State is doing right now. Absolutely none. I was looking at it yesterday. I went back and I looked at it last night. I have no idea what their portal strategy is. And so Mike Norvell's got a bit of a stay of execution right now. They decided they wanted to pour some money into the portal. I don't like the way the way they're using that money in the portal at all. So I'm not too optimistic about where things go from here, I guess we'll have to wait and see. They're going to have talent, but it just seems like it's more of the same, frankly. So that's, I think, troublesome. And on the Clemson side, I mean, the story over the last couple of years now with Dabo Swinney has been his inability to adapt. And that's not to say that Dabo needs to be out there bringing in 30 transfers a year or anything like that, but it just seems like whatever philosophy he is trying to impart upon this football team is not working in the way that it did before. So I would probably lean on the side of Clemson being in a little bit more trouble than Florida State, just because I really don't understand if there's a strategy to adapt at all. I think Mike Norvell and Florida State are trying, but I just don't know if he's good enough at doing it. So in a sense, I would say yes, are in trouble, but trouble in this case, I think means they're probably not viable playoff contenders for, the next year or two.
Ty, as long as we have you, just want to ask you a couple of Syracuse questions. What do you make of what the Orange has done in the transfer portal to this point, and your expectations for this team with Steve Angeli, again, theoretically back and healthy from that Achilles injury?
Yeah, I mean, so first and foremost, it's a tough schedule next year to my eye, and it's early, and, things are going to change between now and then, but they do have Clemson, they do have Louisville, they do have SMU, they do play Notre Dame, that game's at home. Who knows what you get out of Pitt or even North Carolina next year. So it's a bit of an uphill struggle in my view in terms of what they've got on the schedule. And Jelly coming back healthy, I mean, he was good before he got hurt. And so I think the combination of that with maybe not so much what they did in the transfer portal, but they definitely made a decided effort in high school recruiting to go out there and, load up on wide receivers. So I think they've got some young wide receivers coming in that look exciting to me. I also like the wide receiver they got from Penn State via the transfer portal. So I think they are doing about as good as you could expect right now. And Fran Brown clearly has a pretty good eye for talent. So I tend to trust that he will put a team out there that plays hard, goes whistle to whistle, and probably knocks off a couple of these teams here that appear to be on the 2026 slate. But until this thing is done and dusted, and we fully know who is in the portal, we fully know who has committed to Syracuse, and so on and so forth, it's probably a bit premature.
That's Ty Hildebrandt from the Solid Verbal College Football Podcast, one of our favorite guests here on the show. And speaking of football, Paulie, literally as we're doing this show, we learned that your beloved coach, Mike Tomlin, has decided to step down as head coach of the Steelers.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. This could be, I fear, one of those you might get what you wish for type things. Nice way of letting him go. He's stepping down. But, they haven't won a playoff game in a decade. So time to move on, it looks like.
Yeah. Time to move on from Mike Tomlin. Do you think it's time to move on for Aaron Rodgers? Do you think this is it for him?
Well, I think those two are a package. Like, I don't.
Right, but I'm saying, do you think he's going to play anywhere else, or do you think Aaron Rodgers
I think he's
is
done? And if he does, I don't care.
Yeah,
I think the Steelers are in an offensive rebuild, which could be ugly next year.
That's fair. Certainly looked like they were in offensive rebuild last night in the playoffs against the Texans. All right, we got to run everybody again. 9 o'clock tip inside the dome between Syracuse and Florida State. Be sure to tune in to News Channel 9 tonight at 11. We'll have a complete recap. For Paulie, I'm Steve. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll talk to you again tomorrow.
Download the WSYR Plus app on your TV to stream News Channel 9 for free. Just go to your smart TV, search WSYR Plus in the App Store, and download to start streaming today.